Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. How is your day? I hope you're having a good day and also a healthy. And don't forget your health protocol because the COVID isn't over yet, guys. Okay, remember. And we're here. We're gonna presenting about productivity in morphology. The topic is we have four topic here. The first one is introduction. Introduction contains kind of productivity. And the second one is in-depth, which is productivity in shape, productivity in meaning, and productivity in compounding. The third one is measuring productivity, semantic blocking. And the last one is conclusion that contains productivity in syntax. But before we started, I gonna introduce you to our member. We have Iskandar and Lindayati. The first one, I'm gonna tell you guys about kinds of productivity. Okay, textbook on linguistic and particularly on word structure usually introduce at an early stage distinction between productive and unproductive word formation process. Some readers of this book may wonder why I have not done so before now, especially when discussing criteria for determining which words are lexical items, or the variety of plural and past tense forms in English. On the contrary, once the various senses are teased apart, the outcome turns to shed light on the relationship between word formation and lexical listing, and to highlight an important respect in which word structures differs from sentence structures. Productivity is closely tied to regularity, but regularity in shape has to be distinguished from regularity in meaning. Okay, now I'm gonna tell you about productivity in shape. In earlier chapters, we have observed that some of process of inflection and derivation are more widely used than others. For example, among ways of forming abstract nouns from adjectiveness, as in grayness, happiness, or richness, is more widely used than ed, as in sensitivity or purity, or the, as in depth and length. I will use less ed and the to tease apart different way in which a process can be productive. The suffix ness is formally general in the sense that when attached to most adjective, it yields an abstract noun which is either in common use, such as grayness, richness, etc., or would not need to be listed and as a lexical item because its existence is predictable given the existence of the adjective. Thus, once one has learned the existence and meaning of the adjective uses, one does not have to learn separately the existence of a noun, the uselessness discussed in chapter 2. The suffix "-ness is also formally regular in the sense that one can specify what sort of structure an adjective must have in order to be a possible base for it, namely any structure, whatever. That is, whatever adjectiveness is attached to. The results sound like a possible noun, even though it may not be one that is conventionally used. For example, sensitiveness, pureness, longness. If native English speakers hear a non-English speaker use the word longness instead of length, they will almost certainly be able to understand what the speaker means, even if longness is not a word that they themselves would use. By contrast, both ed and the are much less general. With most adjectives, the result of attaching either of these something that is not only not an actual noun, but also not a possible noun. For example, grave and rigidity. sounds not merely unconventional but positively un-English by contrast with longness. They are not words that we would understand without effort in the unlikely event of our hearing them used. But this does not mean that both of these suffixes are equally irregular. The behavior of ness and ity shows that regularity does not imply generality. Even with the basis where ity is regular, it is by no means totally general. It is easy to think of adjectives which on formal grounds are suitable places for a noun ity, but for which no such corresponding noun is in common use. Example is offensive, aggressive, social chemical, pronoun, nuclear, and so on. I say not in common use rather than never used because nouns such as offensivity, sociality, or languidity does not sound wrong in a way that rigidity or grim does. A check in large dictionary may reveal that some of these nouns have indeed been used. The important point, however, is that a noun ity does not exist automatically just through the existence of suitable base adjective, as with diocesianus and dioecious. The suffix ity has more gaps in the distribution, even in the domain where it is regular than the suffixness has. This kind of gappiness is particularly characteristic of suffixes is borrowed directly or indirectly from Latin rather than inherited from Proto-Germanic, a topic to which we return in chapter 9. Imagine, for example, that the adverb forming "ly" suffix could be attached not only to adjective but also to nouns and verbs, so as to form the numerous adjectives such as infantly, meaning inventively, and gloomily, meaning gloomily, but that the existence of such noun-derived and verb-derived adverbs as well as the adjective-derived one is haphazard and unpredictable. So there happens to exist the word selectively means selectively or cheerily mean cheerily. It is hard to find an example in English of the derivational process of haphazard as that. But this is not surprising because it is hard to imagine how a collection of words with just this property would come into existence unless a process is relatively regular. Few new words are likely to be created by means of it or to become established in general usage once they have been introduced so easily. Suffixation, whereas irregular, as we are assuming, the class of words exhibiting it would never be likely to be numerous. We can therefore take it in practice, although not by definition. Formally, generality presupposes formal regularity, but not vice versa. Okay, the next one will be presented by our friend Iskandar.
Yeah, thank you, Fajar. The next topic is productivity in meaning semantic regularity. The reversal process is semantically regular if the contribution that it makes to the meaning of the lexemes produced by its uniform and consistent. An example is adverb forming, like this is not only formally regular likeness, but also semantically regular in that it almost contributes the meaning in an expression or to an x degree. Semantic and formal regularity can diverge. However, again, the suffix "it" provides handy illustration. As we have seen, "it" nouns are formally regular when they refer from adjective with a range of suffixes such as "if," "al," and "are," and the noun selectivity, locality, partiality, and polarity all exist. It may strike you, however, that none of this noun means exactly what one might accept on the basis of the meaning of the base adjective, selectively as a technical meaning related to radio reception, not share with selectiveness, which has only the accepted non-technical meaning. Next slide, please. Similar behavior is exhibited by adjective forming suffix able. This is formally regular and general. The bases to which it can attach are transitive verb, and there is sacrally and any transitive verb for which a corresponding adjective in able is idiosyncratically lacking include a brand new verb such as yalcinis. In the same exercise, 2, we note that words formed with the suffix ion and even some words with the formally highly regular li and s are not entirely predictable in meaning. The divergence between formal and semantic regularity in the version contrasts sharply with how the affection behaves as described in chapter 4. There are semantic regularity is the norm even where formal process differ. For example, no past tense for a verb has any unexpected extra meaning or function, whether it is formal regular, for example, performed, or irregular, for example, broke and sung. This contrast is not so surprising. However, if we remember that word formulated by inflection are all form of one lexeme, and therefore necessarily are all form of one lexeme, and therefore necessarily belong to one lexical item. Whereas words formulated by derivation belong to different lexeme and therefore at least potentially different lexical item. Next slide, please. Another illustration of how semantic and formal regularity can differ is supplied by verbs with the bound root. Meet in chapter 5, we noted that the three nouns commitment, committal, and commission all have meaning related to meanings of the verb commit. But the distribution of these meanings among the three nouns is non-predictable in a way that will allow an adult learner of English to guess it. For more information, you can see the table. And please next slide, please. The question marks indicate words which are not in my active vocabulary, but which I would not be surprised to hear indeed. Thus, simultaneity exists as a technical term in physics, meaning a measure of the ability to transmit radiation. The takes question marks and gaps some random except for the consistent trick in the ion column. It seems that ion suffixation is formally regular with the room meet, that is for any verb. With the root meet, there is guaranteed to be a corresponding abstract noun in. For example, mission, that they saw it seemed natural to accept that the meanings of this noun should be entirely regular. Yet, we have already seen that for commission, this is not so. Commission 2 is semantically irregular in that the meanings of primate and ion are not sufficient to determine the sense temporary improvement during progress illness. So the fact that a noun in mission is guaranteed to excite for every verb in mid does not mean that for any individual such noun as speaker or encounter it for the first time will be able to predict confidently what it means. Next slide. In chapter 6, we note that the most common kind of compound in English is the compound noun, whether primarily high net or secondary high raster. It is uncommon nouns of the NN type that I will consider here. It's shown out that primary and secondary compounds are not highly regular formally, but only secondary compounds are highly regular semantics. Again, therefore, the distinction between formal and semantic regularity turns out to be useful. As we note in chapter 6, the most natural way to interpret her restore is substance for restoring high growth. That is to interpret the first component her as the object of the verbal element in the second restore. A secondary compound for which this mode of interpretation yields the right meaning is semantically regular. Therefore, the secondary compounds given at 17 in chapter 6, namely 6 writer, slum, recurrent crime, preparation with fulfillment are semantically regular, but there are also semantically irregular compounds with the appearance of the secondary compound. Next slide, please. Machine washing might in some context be interpreted washing of machine, but more often it means washing in a washing machine. As opposed to by hand, glove torture is somewhat travel around the world a lot. Not someone would throw gloves wherever that word means. In voice activation, it is not a voice that is activated, but rather a message, say a computer, that is activated by spoken commands rather than by a keyboard mouse. There is room for debate whether these are secondary compounds of a semantically usual kind or primarily compound in which the second component just happens to be delivered from a first. How it is more useful to define the term secondary compounds more narrowly so that the first compound must be the object of the verb element, or more readily so as to permit the first component to be related to the verbal element in some other way. For example, as instrument, machine washing, or location, global torture. It is not important to give a firm answer to that question here. What one can say, however, is that the semantic unpredictability of the example at 4 is far from unusual among NN compound. In fact, it's a kind of unpredictability shared by our primary compound recall for chapter 6, the discussion of HiNet, mosquito net, and butterfly net. It is not the structure of this compound in conjunction with the meanings of the components that tell us precisely what it stands for. Rather, it is our knowledge of the word, such as the difference in the ways that mosquito and butterflies invade on human beings. Primary and compounds are just exactly irregular semantically in that their exact interpretation is unpracticable without the help of this sort of real-world knowledge. The semantic irregularity of primary compounds does not entail any formal irregularity. However, in fact, any two nouns, whether can be used as for in English to produce a formally acceptable root compound. For example, both moon and bridge, cold, with stress on the first element as indicated are possible English nouns, even though neither has ever been used so far as I know, and it is not clear what either of them will mean except in the Pagustrem. Moon association somehow with both and cold association someone with bread. Thank you.
Okay, the next topic will be presented by our friends Linda Yani. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Pajar, for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Linda Yani. I will explain about measuring productivity, the significance of neologism. So far, we have discussed various aspects of the productivity of the reputational process, such as et and nest suffixation, without the help of any objectively quantifiable measurements. We have not introduced any scale from 0 to 1, say in terms of which nest might score 0.9 and ET 0.5. This may look like a serious defect. Any conclusion about formal regularity and generality in particular must be more or less subjectivity unless they are based on figures of one mighting. What we need is a comparison between the actual frequency of a process and its potential frequency. Appropriately defined, the more closely the actual figure of process the potential figure, the more productivity the process is, in some sense. In practice, however, devising such a measure has turned out to be extremely tricky. For example, ET is formally regular when applied to adjectivities with certain suffixes such as "aus," "if," and "able," but otherwise irregular, for example, when it is attached to suffixless adjectivities. This has the advantage that non-existent nouns such as rigidity can be classed as formally irregular, but the disadvantage that it entails that actual nouns such as purity, sanity, oddity, and severity must be irregular too. If we dislike this outcome, we must extend the range of adjectivities that count as potential paths for ET suffixation so as to include at least pure, say odd, and severe. But how far shall this extension go? If the new potential paths are taken to be just those unsuffixed adjectives for which corresponding nouns in ET exist, that the ratio of actual to potential ET nouns will remain high, but only because we have contrived that it should be so. If at the other extreme, we let pure sense odd and severe persuade us that any adjective, whatever, can be a potential best, then the actual to potential ratio dwindles to almost zero, and our measure fails to capture the difference in feel between gloriosity, plausible, but glory and veracity highly implausible. What is the appropriate intermediate position between these extremes? Then it is hard to answer that question except subjectively. Thus, the objectivity that a numerical ratio will subtly turn out to be frustratingly elusive. Okay, next slide. Science about 1990, however, a new set of numerical measures have been devised that avoid subjective bias and yet seem they correspond well to what we feel we mean when we talk about productivity. These measures exploit the extremely large corpora or bodies of linguistic material that have been assembled on computer by linguistic and dictionary makers for the purpose of studying both the frequency with which words, like sounds and word forms, occur on the context in which they occur. For a process to be productive, in one sense, it shall be a process that can be used to form granulism or neologism. So can we identify neologism in one of these large corpora? Unfortunately, we cannot do so entirely. All we can tell for certain is that a lexeme with an earlier that occurrence in the corpus is not brand new. However, we can rely on the fact that most neologisms within the corpus will be rare. In fact, all will be rare except those that quickly become fashionable. So, even if we cannot directly identify neologism, an alternative that is both appropriate and feasible is to identify words that are extremely rare, especially those that occur only once in the whole corpus, so-called hapax legomena, singular hapax legomenon, a Greek expression borrowed from classical studies, meaning said only once. We can now focus on the morphological processes that are used in hapax legomena and other very rare words and compare them with processes that are used in more frequently occurring words. Next. In the copial corpus of about 18 million English word tokens based at Birmingham University and used by the dictionary publisher Collins, the number of word type exhibit in ET regularly 400 is not greatly less than the number exhibiting thus roughly 500. However, most of the ET words are of common occurrence. More technically, their token frequency is high, while many more of the type exhibiting this have low token frequency, including Hapag's legomena, that is, although by one measure seems to be not much more productivity than it is far more likely than it to be used in the creation of neologism. The suffix "nas" reads high both in the number of words that contain it, words as types, that is, not tokens, and in its applicability for neologism. The suffix is ranks high by the first measure but low by the second, called an affix rank, low by the first measure and high by the second. The answer is yes. The copial corpus contains relatively fewer types with the suffix and S. In Canadian Wagnerian, yet a very high proportion of these are of low token frequency. Rather surprisingly, therefore, for an affix to be suitable for use in a brand new word, it does not have to effort in a large number of exciting words. Next. Productivity in syntax. The most important findings to bear in mind are two. First, a process can be formal, regular without being semantically regular, as is illustrated by the suffixation of ion to produce nouns from verb with the roots. Secondly, semantically regular relationships between lexemes, that is, semantic relationships that have more or less widespread parallelism involving all the lexemes can subsist without morphological support. If semantic and formal regularity often go together, that is hardly surprising since lexemes so constructs will be relatively easy to learn and will provide the most natural models on which new lexemes can be created, but is oversimplifying to classify as simply irregular or unproductive any morphological relationship that is not in all respects straightforward. It is natural to ask why productivity growth is an issue so insistently with word formation, but not with sentence formation. Are there no syntactic constructions that are less productive than others, such as construction, do indeed seem to exist? Okay, next. For example, there is no obvious reason why the contraction they gave us a present or they fix us the answer in which a verb has two objects shall be acceptable in those examples but unacceptable or less readily acceptable in they plan as a holiday or they spoil it as the evening. The lexical entries for at least some of these verbs must specify whether or not they tolerate the double object construction. The reason why this sort of syntactic restriction is less usual than the kind of morphological restriction discussed in this chapter is not immediately obvious.
Well, okay, maybe that's it from our group about the material productivity and morphology. If you guys still have a question about this material, feel free to ask it and go ahead. But before we start the question and answer section, we have a gift from our classmates, which is an intermezzo. Okay, for you guys, do enjoy the intermezzo. Okay, well, uh, that is some intermezzo from our class. It was fascinating, isn't it? So, okay. So let's open the question and answer session. Feel free to ask in whatever platform you have. Maybe that's it from our group. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for you guys who already came and watch our topic. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.